Good morning to all. Political obligation is one of the important topic in political thought. Particularly, political obligation explains the evolution and existence of reason of the state. It is the soul for the functioning of law because the political obligation acts as the focal point for the effective implementation of law. When the law will be effective. Whenever the people accept the law or obey the laws will be effective, otherwise it is not useful. So the central ideology of political obligation assumes a centrality in a particular state or political society in the circumstances of the use and abuse of political power. Obedience and disobedience is a recurring theme of the evaluation and growth of human civilization, and this lead to a large number of social, moral, legal, political changes in the human society. Man is a social animal, he can't live alone. So living together in a different community creates a variety of problems ranging from conflicts between two individuals to conflicts between groups of people. So the degree of conflict between the people and the group may vary according to the circumstances and the minds of the people. So the human being realized the need for some authority to regulate human behavior in social life. This leads them to develop political consciousness and they enter into a politically organized society. However, in due course of its existence, the politically organized community developed numerous conflicts of different hues. One such conflict was related to individual allegiance towards the political authority. So this leads to various questions: how to generate trust among their fellow beings, to surrender some of the rights to restore order in the society. The next question is, what kind of relation should be there between the political authority and the people? And another thing is, what kind of authority should the people endeavor to establish? Then what should be the limits of that political power or authority? And finally, why and how should they trust the authority? That the authority will always aim at common interests rather than the self-interest while making laws and policies to govern the society. How that authority should regulate the behavior of the individual with each other and with the authority of the state. Above all, why the individual should or must obey the state? What should be the extent of obedience of the individual towards the state? So such questions lead to various kinds of political or the power arrangement to regulate human behavior in their day-to-day interaction and to address the perennial problem of disobedience and distrust towards the authority. Subsequently, such authority came to be known as political authority, which later came to be regarded as the state. With the passage of time, state become omnipotent in human life. The state appears to be everywhere in human life and regulating the conditions of our lives from birth registration to the death registration. But it is very difficult to understand the nature of the state. Even today the political philosophers are thinking about the nature of perfect state, and nobody can claim to exist or to have existed in a perfect state. Evaluation of state led to the development of political authority with consequent necessity of political obligation. Simply you understood, it would mean duty to the commands of the sovereign. However, with the growing complexities of societies and state, questions began to be raised as why one must obey the state. What are the circumstances under which one may render his or her obedience or disobedience to the authority of the state? Political authority in due course of time got transformed into political power, and there began the corrupt practices within the government and process of governance. Command of the sovereign was not always in the common interest of the community, that led to disobedience. Whenever the command was found to be against the common interest and in favor of self-interest of the sovereign, the people disobey the laws of the state. So, the history of hitherto society thus is replete with the history of resistance movements and revolutions which were the manifestation of citizens' disobedience to the authority of the day. A revolution has also been used to denote a sea change or a profound change on an unprecedented scale brought about in the life of men in the way erstwhile men were doing some activities or producing things. Therefore, it is essential to understand which of the revolutions were for the purpose of resistance against authority and which of the revolutions were for a positive change in the way of doing something. Revolutions or resistance could be violent or peaceful. It means non-violent. It could be on a wider scale, engaging the whole territory in which the political authority of the particular ruler extends or limited to a particular city, hence localized. It could be based on certain ideology and hence organized on the basis of long-term preparations, or may also get triggered on the basis of some spontaneous event or incident. It may have a leader or maybe a leaderless resistance movement, or as an outburst expressed by a group of people or masses. Common among most resistance movement happens to be the dissatisfaction with the prevailing norms, tradition or governance, and hence disobedience to the prevailing norms or the authority of the rulers. There are a lot of examples for the revolutions. For example, you take the American Civil War was fought by settlers of America against the Britishers. Again, you take the French Revolution. It was once again the atrocities of the existing authorities in which the revolutionaries not only disobeyed the commands of the sovereign but also led to their replacement. So, you know, Napoleon Bonaparte emerged as a great warrior, bringing glory to France and breaking down feudalism in the Europe. Another example you take, the glorious revolution of 1688 brought permanent changes in the England. This ended in 1688, the despotic ruler of England overthrown. This was a bloodless revolution, and so it was called glorious revolution. So many centuries are still facing resistance of one or the other kind. Most such protests, offsprings and resistance movements are first branded as an illegal movement which the state or the existing political authority tries to suppress and control the same. Therefore, it is widely agreed that questions concerning the moral justification of the illegal political protest and resistance are the questions of political obligation. So, the concept of political obligation, as often understood, has been found mistaken and thus has raised debate around the concept. So, the concept of political obligation is often defined so restrictively that it cannot encompasses all the considerations which are relevant to the moral justification of political disobedience. Only when the concept is given an inclusive definition, that is true to say questions concerning the moral justification of political disobedience or the questions of political obligation. A widely prevalent misconception is that the concept of political obligation could have an inclusive definition for all time in future, and the questions concerning the resistance within the state could be the settled once for all. So, the meaning and scope of the term political obligation, which concentrates on the people's obedience to that authority, which they conceived to regulate their own behavior or the state. The expression people's obedience to the state in the political science terminology means political obligation towards the state. The term obligation here means the various responsibilities that the citizens of the state owe towards their political authority or the state. Therefore, it makes it obvious that the problem of political obligation means the problem of obedience within the state. More precisely, it addresses the perennial question, why do men obey the state, or why should individual obey the political authority? This also leads to the question as to when and under what circumstances should individual register their disobedience. However, the explanations have been not that simple. It has been full of ambiguous and complexities, as almost every kindred word related to political obligations, that is, obedience, disobedience, obligation, authority, power, and political, etc. Therefore, without entering into the debate related to the meaning of politics and its adjective political, it is concluded for the purpose of understanding the term political obligation that the first meaning of the term politics or political, that is, the matters pertaining to the state, shall be considered. In the next lecture, we will discuss detailedly about the meaning, nature, scope, definitions of political obligation. Thank you.